coming up.
Is that a good strategy to improve cow-calf profitability by selecting for a higher weaning weight? I think that's a big revelation to the industry.
Get the lowdown on the complexities of genetic decision-making next on The American Rancher. Hello, and welcome to The American Rancher. I'm Pam Minnick. Today's show is packed full of valuable information about making genetic decisions for your cow-calf operation. We're with Lee Leachman and a group of Colorado and Wyoming ranchers. Lee is a partner in Leachman Cattle in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is one of the top 5 seed stock operations in the country. Lee serves as president of the Beef Improvement Federation and is recognized as an expert in cattle breeding and genetic improvement. He speaks to ranchers around the world about the complexities of genetic decisions. And today, Lee and his panel discuss one of the hottest topics in the beef industry, keeping a commercial cow-calf operation profitable.
Hi, I'm Lee Leachman, and we're here in Fort Collins, Colorado. I've got a group of ranchers here from Colorado and Wyoming, and we're going to be talking about what drives profitability in the cow-calf sector. If we think about the cattle industry over the last 50 years and the changes we've seen in the industry genetically, the seed stock industry has largely pursued more growth and more carcass traits. We've made cattle substantially bigger, we've made them grow faster, but I'm not really sure we've made them more profitable for the cow-calf sector. And so we really have to think about how this selection for growth is impacting those cows. And we really need to think about the fact that the trends within the breeds and within the breeders is to select for more and more growth and more carcass. And so I think it could present some problems. And the question that I like to ask ranchers, and that we're really going to discuss here today, is if we continue to select for more growth rate and more carcass traits, is that really going to improve the profitability of a commercial cow herd? And so we've got 6 guys here that are friends of ours and customers of ours from here in northern Colorado and Wyoming. And we just have asked them to come in today and talk with us about what the drivers are in their cow herds and what they see as being important going forward. So thank you guys for coming today. And we'll just maybe start out with the key kind of question, which is, what is the most important thing to profitability in your cow-calf operation selling calves at weaning time?
Look, I think to start with, we got to figure out how to keep tabs on our input costs. Because if we don't control that, we don't control necessarily what the out cost is going to be. So profitability starts with making sure we have cows that don't cost us too much.
How we control cost.
I think a live calf is very important in our situation. We need calves that can get up and go. Cows don't have trouble with them, and I think that's super important in our program.
I think with my experience, the feed costs and labor are 2 of the biggest costs on a ranch, and so the systems you have in place dictate those costs, and you can really improve them by designing systems that have that in mind.
Don't require extra labor or extra feed, right? Obviously one of the drivers is how much output you have, right? We kind of skipped over that one, but obviously growth rate and the value of that calf. We talked about cow cost and how much does that cow eat. Not something we've been able to measure historically, but now we can, and that's an interesting thing to look at. And then the reproduction stuff, which we hit on, does that calf, because when I think of reproduction, I think it's like, unless the calf's alive at weaning, there really wasn't reproduction because there wasn't a live calf event, right? We got to get that calf all the way to sale. So the calving ease, the breeding at 15 months, the breeding back early of the cow, and the survival of that calf all make a big difference. And then longevity. And maybe somebody wants to speak to the longevity effect. I know, Wayne, when you guys doing your math, the depreciation and the value of that cow comes into play on your cost structure.
Oh, absolutely. And so And time of calving, whether you've got some crossbreeding going on in your herd, all those kind of things add into the longevity. And you just think about it, if you've got to keep more heifers back because you're turning your cow herd over, you've got less income. Doesn't make much difference what they weigh, because if you have to keep them back to save them over, can't sell them.
I think no matter where I go in the world, what we want to do on each of those areas is the same. We'd like to increase output if we could make sure we don't lose in those other areas. We'd like the cow to eat less, to control those costs going in, to fit the environment and manage that whole system. We'd like them to reproduce better, more efficiently, and we'd like them to stay in the herd longer if we could. I think what's funny about all that is when you go to a typical bull sale, if I ask you to select for all that stuff, is there information in that catalog that tells you how reproduction's going to go, or cow cost's going to go, or longevity's going to go?
Coming up,
If what we're after is more calves and more weight and better price and better feed cost and more longevity, if we're just selecting for that weaning weight, what do we think happens to the number of calves?
growth EPDs are popular, but they can be problematic. Lee explains after the break. You're watching The American Rancher. Welcome back to The American Rancher. Most ranchers look for bulls that produce heavy weaning weights. These days, the expected progeny differences for weaning and yearling weights that are published in sale catalogs reflect that demand. Selection for growth and weaning EPDs will certainly affect long-term cow herd profitability, but as Lee explains, other factors must be considered.
Is there information in that catalog that tells you how reproduction's going to go, or cow cost's going to go, or longevity's going to go?
Not typically. It's a hard animal to get all of those correlations put together into a package that you can understand.
So many of the catalogs that you get nowadays almost have too much information.
I think the reality is on a lot of these traits, if we look, most of the EPDs we have in there tell us how fast they grow, how big they get, and how good their carcass is. They really don't tell us what they ate, and they don't tell us how big the cow's going to get, and they don't tell us at all how the cow's going to reproduce, and they don't tell us anything about longevity, right? And, I think a couple of you mentioned using hybrid cows. I mean, one of the things we know is that hybrid vigor has a huge effect on reproduction and longevity, right? I mean, it's just an enormous effect. The data says, we're going to get 23% more pounds weaned per cow exposed by having a crossbred cow. And that's mostly over here, a little bit on the output. They milk a little more. They stay in a little better flesh, but mainly they reproduce better and they stay in the herd longer. And I think if we look at this function and say, what happens if we go straight bred high growth? Well, we know that the typical rancher, when they get a catalog, the first thing they look at is weaning weight. And if what we're after is more calves and more weight and better price and better feed cost and more longevity, if we're just selecting for that weaning weight, what do we think happens to the number of calves?
I would say it would go down. In
The
my
long-term
experience.
effect.
The long-term effect.
It's probably down, right?
Yes.
What about calf weight? If we select for that,
It better go up.
better go up, right? Or something's not working, right? Now, I think I put a sideways arrow on that one because I think our environment's limited. Let's face it, most seed stock environments are a little different than most commercial environments. And so if that genetics can express itself under this maximum nutrition environment in the seed stock herd, and you take it to a limited nutrition environment, which is what most commercial operations that we sell to are in for one reason or another, you're maybe not going to get all of that expressed, right? What happens to calf price if weaning weight goes up?
The price per pound goes down, and
Price per pound goes down, right? It's the slide that we get on our, so I put that arrow down slightly. What about cow feed cost? If we're selecting for higher weaning weights and higher milk production, what happens to your cow feed cost?
Cow cost will go up.
should go up, right? And longevity?
Probably down.
Probably down, right? So if we all agree that that's kind of the function, and we all agree that's the way we want it to go, and we all agree that that's probably the way it's going to go if we select for that, is that a good strategy to improve cow-calf profitability by selecting for a higher weaning weight?
If we're in it for a 1-year show, you bet.
Yeah, right? If we're terminal cross, great idea, right?
If the bank needs a check next year and that's it.
But I think that's a big revelation to the industry. I mean, it's interesting because I've given this talk in Australia, New Zealand, in Europe, in South America. It's all the same. I mean, we've all been guilty of seeing these seed stock animals that grow like crazy, and we say, well, that's what I want. I want my cattle to grow like crazy and have heavy weights. And we go buy those genetics, and this is what happens, and we scratch our head. What about this feed cost deal? Let's talk a little bit more about that. I mean, I think feed and land costs are probably higher now than they've ever been, maybe with the exception of when we had the corn price spike up so far. But how big of a concern is that in your cow-calf operation?
Well, it's got to be a major concern. I mean, that's what drives it.
Yep. Cost of production. And do we think these cows eat a lot more feed than they used to eat?
It's been my experience when I had my straight bred cows that I used all the EPDs for growth on for years, and then I lost my hybrid vigor and my cows started getting big, and when I started using the composite stabilizer type bulls, it was just so much simpler. I gained all the hybrid vigor. I had uniform calves. My cow size has gone down. My feed costs have gone down. It's just solved a lot of problems for me and made it a lot simpler, and it's worked out very well.
You have to take all of this. You have to have the right kind of cow that'll do the things we're talking about, that'll fit your environment.
You know, people have a big discussion about this. How big do you want that cow to be, right? And I say, you know, you want her to be big enough to raise a calf that finishes in the feedlot at a really good heavy weight. But given that ability to produce that heavy calf, you'd like her to be as small as you could get her, right?
I didn't realize how big our cow size was getting until we put a scale under our chute.
We kind of think if you talk about a cow in body condition score 5.5, that these 12 to 1,300 pound cows are kind of in the middle. If your environment's a little better than average, you're going to be above that. If your environment's a little worse than average, you're going to be below that. I don't think there's a lot of 1,000-pound cows left. At least not in the mainstream genetics world. We don't see that. And I don't think those cows can raise a calf that when it goes in the feedlot will finish at over 900 pounds on carcass weight. And that's kind of what the carcass has to do at the other end to make the feedlot work.
After the break,
Now we go to a bull sale and we buy this big growthy bull. He makes lousy cows. It wrecks our business.
genetic selection for growth and weaning weight can be a trap, but Lee explains how selection indexes can help keep you out of trouble. Stay with us. Welcome back to The American Rancher. With so much pressure on cow-calf operation to reduce cost and increase efficiency, the idea of using selection indexes is a hot topic. Some ranchers love them, some don't. Lee and his guests take a close look at how selection indexes work in the real world.
We know single trait selection doesn't work because single trait selection ignores everything else. Indexes are good because they look at multiple traits, but if you use an index that doesn't look at all the traits, you can have trouble, okay? So when we look at this cow-calf function, we have an index called dollar ranch that's part of the dollar profit. It looks at everything in this model, okay? So the only thing that's gonna hurt us on that if we chase dollar ranch too far is if there's something that drives profitability that we're not measuring. Okay? And you always have to be thinking about that. If you're selecting for one thing and there are 7 things that drive profit. It doesn't work out well. That's what this showed, right? Now, if you're selecting for all these at the same time, it works out better, but you still have to always be asking yourself, did I leave something out? And if we only have to think about competing species, and even in the cattle industry and the dairy model, the chicken guys, they made a lot of selection pressure. They actually made the chickens grow so fast their legs wouldn't support them. That wasn't in their model, right? Big oops, right? The swine guys, they made the pigs so lean that they had huge tenderness problems. Another big oops. The dairy guys, they had a great index to raise milk production.
No reproduction.
Reproduction wasn't in it. I'm like, well, who didn't think that reproduction was important to profit? I don't know, but somehow they did that. But we know that these indexes work, and we know they're going to move you. This is one of my favorite graphics. This shows chicken production from the 1950s compared to the 2001, and you see how much faster chickens grow today than they used to, but they made that selection without increasing dry matter intake. Basically, these chickens at the bottom ate the same per day as the chickens on the top. They actually reduced the feed conversion by 1/3. Okay? Chickens at the top converted 2.6 to 1. These chickens are at 1.8 to 1. Today, they're more like 1.3 to 1.5 to 1. You know, they've made this huge selection progress on that. Not something we've done in cattle. So we know that the indexes work. That's why when we go to sell our bulls, instead of just having the basic EPDs that most people have, we run these 3 indexes. The Dollar Ranch Index, profit from birth through weaning, includes the fertility and milk and growth and cow feed intake that we've been talking about today. And as we see it today, when we look out in the industry, it's the only index that's out there today that'll select for that profitability from birth through weaning, looking at all those factors we talked about. We've got another index, dollar feeder, which is profit from weaning to harvest. There's lots of indexes in the industry that look like dollar feeder. Simmental has one called the terminal index. Angus has one called dollar beef. Dollar beef is a terminal index. It's looking at feed conversion and carcass value and carcass weight, and it's going to make cattle grow faster and get bigger and heavier and leaner. And then we have the dollar profit where we put them together. It's really just both parts put together. It's the one number, as you said, Randy, that predicts your bottom line. That's kind of what's behind our saying. We say, you know, if we select for that index, we make cows that work. If we selected just for Dollar Ranch, cows would work even better. They would. Okay, so if you're a customer and you're coming to us and you're going to sell the calves at weaning, you can select just on Dollar Ranch, but your steers won't be as valuable, right? And you can't. You said this, the comment, have your cake and eat it too. If you select just for Dollar Ranch, you don't get to eat the cake. You can have your cake, but you don't get to eat the cake. If you select just for dollar feeder, the cows don't work. And so we feel good about the index because it's balancing those two things.
And you jump back into a heavy growth rotation, you could fall back faster.
There are a lot of bulls out there today that are being used that our system says they're going to cost you $50 to $75 per cow. Some of the old cattle, I mean, those of us that study bloodlines, if we go back and say, here's a great maternal bull. Here's a bull, the daughters lasted forever and we really liked them. When you look up their Dollar Ranch, they're all really high. They might have been born a long time ago. Their growth and carcass EPDs by modern standards look bad. None of us would go to a bull sale and buy them, but their daughters were great cows. Okay. Now we go to a bull sale and we buy this big growthy bull. He makes lousy cows. It wrecks our business. And I think because you have that data, I mean, those of us that have used it a lot, we start to say, wow, this is really helping us avoid those bulls that created those daughters that just didn't work at all for us. In 1996, we started measuring cow weight. Cows got big. We were at about, in 1997, our average cow weight was 1,400 pounds. And I can remember my dad said, that's big enough. So we said, okay, let's try to find the cattle who grow fast, but the cow weight doesn't go up. And then this curve started going up. And then we started measuring ultrasound. and it started going up. And then we started measuring feed efficiency. And so the better job we do at selecting for profit, the more profit we get. It's just the way it works. If you don't select for the whole bundle of traits, you don't get it. Well, it's been great, guys. I want to thank you guys for participating with us today. And we're going to just wrap up and talk a little bit about our sale offering coming up this spring. So our 2019 bull sale will be on March 23rd, 24th, and 25th here in Fort Collins. And we're going to offer 500 of our stabilizer bulls. This is their average EPD profile. They're pretty moderate on birth and kind of middle of the road on growth, quite a bit of marbling for a composite population and quite a bit of ribeye. The interesting thing is that EPD set comes with very low mature cow weight. That's the lowest mature cow weight prediction we've ever had. And it's also the lowest feed intake prediction we've ever had. So this set of bulls has more growth and less cow size and less feed intake. And that translates into higher profit. The average dollar profit on the bulls in the sale is $17.7, and the average dollar ranch is $60. What that prediction says is that average bull is going to generate about $75 more profit on his calves than would the average Angus bull. And on the dollar ranch side, we're about $25 ahead of the average Angus bull. A lot of that coming from the hybrid vigor that's in the stabilizer composite, but a lot of it also coming from moderate cow size and low feed intake. And so those are the big drivers. We want to welcome everybody that can join us to come to Fort Collins and join us for the whole weekend. And if you can't make it, we're going to broadcast on Superior Livestock, and we sure encourage you to bid that way. So thank you for tuning in today.
Making the right genetic decisions can help your ranch not only survive, but thrive for generations to come. To learn more, click on to Leachman.com. Also, be sure to log on to Smart Auctions Sunday, March 24th for another informative Leachman seminar and to bid on their female sale. Log on to smartauctions.co to sign up for their text alerts. And then on Monday, Leachman Cattle Company of Colorado Bull Sale will be broadcast at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, featuring 500 high ranch and profit stabilizer bulls. That's all the time we have today. To find out more about us, visit our website, theamericanrancher.com, or connect with us on Facebook. I'm Pam Minnick. For our entire American Rancher team, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Superior.